Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of Nacogdoches City Council, August 20th, 2024. Brad, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Yes, I will. Please bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this incredible day. I know it's hot outside, but when we have hot weather like this, it makes me grateful for the rain that's come before this and the rain that we know will come after it. In the same way, I'm grateful for all the people in this room today, because whether they agree or disagree, it means that they're involved in our state, in our town, in our country, in our fate, and in your hands. And we pray for your judgment and for your guidance and for us to do it with a good heart. In Jesus Christ's name I pray.
Amen. If you'll stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
The next item on the agenda is open forum. I don't think we have any, do we? We have two public hearings, and you'll be able to speak there if you want to on the regular agenda. Next item, item 4, items to be removed from the consent agenda, and I'll make note that item E has been pulled to a later date.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item E, which is pulled.
And I'll second.
I have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll go to the regular agenda. And this will be a public hearing. Item A, consider approval of a specific use permit for stone, sand, and gravel and mineral excavation for approximately 3.3 acres on lot 17-5, City Block 95. Generally located on the west side of Northwest Stallings Drive, approximately 350 feet north of the northwest Stallings Drive and the West Austin Street intersection. This request has been submitted by Drury Wheaton Investments, LLC, case file number SUP 2024-05. Mr. Paulette.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson, City Council, Juan Paulette, Interim City Planner. The request is for a specific use permit for stone, sand, gravel, and mineral extraction. This property is located on a hilltop with a 20-foot elevation drop sloping towards the front of the property, fronting Northwest Stallings Drive. The owner is currently using the property for the extraction of dirt and other commercial projects in the area and plans to level the property to the level of the roadway. Once the property is at the same grade of the fronting roadway, the owner plans to construct a commercial building in line with the current zoning district. The property is zoned B2 General Business. This area is all zoned B2 General Business and is developed with heavy commercial uses such as a semi-truck sales and repair shop adjacent to the south and a Coca-Cola bottling center to the north. There are a few undeveloped lots adjacent to the north and east across the loop. The west side of the property borders the city limits and is undeveloped. The future land use designation is commercial and is consistent with the current zoning of the property, as well as the properties fronting Northwest Stallings Drive, which are all zoned and developed for commercial uses. Approval of the SUP will not change the land uses permitted by the current underlying zoning district. Staff finds that the future land use plan designation of this property is consistent with the current zoning of the property and is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. These are some pictures of the subject property from the loop. And some commercial properties to the south. I think that's the East Texas Truck Center. To the north, you have the Coca-Cola Distribution Center and some undeveloped commercial property across the loop. This is a picture of inside the property looking from the front and the back. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 5 notices to the property owners and have received no written responses in opposition or in favor of the request. Staff also held a neighborhood meeting for the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property on June 25th. None of the surrounding property owners attended the meeting. Staff believes this request meets the conditions for approval of the specific use permit with the following conditions. Hours of operation are during daylight hours only. Preserve the existing vegetative buffer around the front, southern, and northern property lines. Maintain the silt fencing along the entrance of the property. The SUP will expire in 12 months and maintain the roadway free of mud and debris. This is an aerial view of the vegetative buffer around the property. On August 12th, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to approve the request with the previously mentioned conditions. And this concludes staff's presentation. I can answer any questions from the council. And I believe the applicant, Jeff Cupid, is here, if you have any questions for him.
And this is a specific use permit?
Correct.
It's not a zone change?
Correct.
Okay.
I just have one little question.
Okay.
What happens after the expiration?
After it expires, it just goes back to B2, general business.
And so I assume they will have completed their work by then?
Correct.
And
If
they-
not, they'll just need to request an extension.
Thank you.
When you say daylight hours, it doesn't get dark till 9:30 now. What do you mean by that? Is there a time on it?
There's no specific time, but no, there's not. Just during the daylight. And that area is all commercial. There's no residential in the area.
Right, I'm just curious.
Just for clarification, this came up as a result of city staff being informed of a code enforcement violation. That's why we're in this process.
Correct, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Any other questions?
Mr. Cupid, do you want to come forward? Where is Jeff? I didn't see him.
Probably trying to find a parking place.
He's not here. Okay. Is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of this? There being none, is there anyone that wants to speak against this request? If not, public hearing's closed. And we'll ask for a motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the specific use permit with the recommendations as presented.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay. I know the next one will go that fast, so let's see. It's just a joke. Okay, public hearing. Item 6B, consider approval of a zone change from B2 General Business District to B3 Central Business District for approximately .17 acres for Lot 13, City Block 3, located at 216 North Church Street. This request has been submitted by Grace Garrigan, case file ZON 2024-02. Mr. Paulette.
Thank you, Mayor. Juan Paulette, Interim City Planner. This property is located at 216 North Church Street in the downtown area, just east of the Fredonia Hotel, and is developed as a single-family residence. The property is not in a historical district, but is located adjacent to the Washington Historical District to the north. The applicant plans to convert the house into an indoor-outdoor bar and food service establishment with a family-friendly outdoor recreation area in the backyard that can accommodate a food truck. The surrounding areas are zoned and developed as commercial, which include a mix of retail, restaurants, and general offices, with the exception of a few legal non-conforming single-family homes, Zone B2 to the north, adjacent to the subject property. I'm going to read the definitions of the B2 and B3 zoning districts to clarify the differences between the two. B2 general business is intended to accommodate those business activities that are oriented towards the automobile or whose operations may require limited truck access. Generally, these districts are located along major traffic arteries where strip business development exists. B3 central business is intended to accommodate and enhance commercial activities in the central area of the city, and to promote the downtown as a pedestrian-oriented destination for residents and visitors. This district is intended to build on the area's historic heritage and character. B2 allows for higher intensity land uses geared towards the automobile, such as auto repair, gas stations, and restaurants with drive-thrus. B3 is more restrictive and either does not allow these land uses or restricts them through a specific use permit process. The applicant plans to convert the property into a food service establishment while preserving the character and look of the residential home. Although the proposed use is allowed by right in the B2 zoning, the proposed zone change would remove the parking requirements, allowing the backyard to be used as a seating and recreation area instead of a parking lot. Removing the parking requirements for this establishment has brought concerns for the adjacent property owners. The property owner to the east has a parking lot for her business shown in the red outlined area. Her concern is that her parking lot would be used by the applicant's guests due to the close proximity, leaving her tenants unable to park. The adjacent property owners to the west and north of the subject property also have similar concerns about parking. To mitigate this, the applicant has shared parking agreement with a neighboring property owner for 15 parking spaces as shown in the green outlined area. For reference, under the B2 zoning, the on-site parking requirements for the proposed use would be 13 spaces. In addition, there is also approximately 40 paid parking spaces shown in the blue outlined area. Customers can access the business through the gate entrance on the south side of the property. The applicant also stated that she would post signs instructing her customers not to park in the adjacent lots. There are also 45 additional parking spaces along Arnold Street to the north, less than 300 feet from the subject property. The future land use plan designates the subject property as central city and mixed use, along with the majority of the area shaded in brown. It is described in the city's comprehensive plan as central core of the city, in and around the traditional downtown, where a mix of retail, office, residential, and public uses is permitted and encouraged, subject to development and compatibility standards. The future land use plan is consistent with the proposed B3 Central Business Zoning District, which is intended to build on the area's historical heritage, character, and to promote the downtown as a pedestrian-oriented destination for residents and visitors. The applicant plans to preserve the interior of the house as much as possible. The first floor of the house is about 1,250 square feet and will have a service counter and seating for approximately 35 guests. The second floor will not be open to the public, and all cooking will be done outside by a food truck. The backyard will be fenced in for safety of the guest, and the bottom picture shows the entrance from the shared parking area. These are the views of North Church Street and Edward Street that do not allow for on-street parking. And this is the adjacent commercial property to the east, and the parking lot the owner is concerned will be used by the customers of the proposed business. And this is a view of the shared parking area, just to the south of the subject property, southeast. This is a parking lot in downtown Lufkin with signs stating parking for only for certain businesses. All others will be towed away at owner's expense. Although this will not keep everyone from parking in the areas, it would deter a majority of the people. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 18 notices to those property owners and have received 3 written responses in opposition of the request with concerns related to parking. Staff also received 9 responses in favor of the request, stating that the business will enhance and add value to the neighborhood. Staff held a neighborhood meeting for the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property on June 6th, and none of the surrounding property owners attended the meeting. This slide shows the property owners' responses. The 3 property owners in opposition of the request will prompt a supermajority vote from the City Council for the item to be approved. This occurs when owners of 20% or more of the land within the 200-foot notification area are opposed to the request. In this case, the total land use of the owners opposed is 25%. Staff believes that the proposed zone change from B2 general business to B3 central business is compatible with the surrounding zoning and similar uses. It is in line with the comprehensive plan supporting economic development by keeping a vibrant and viable commercial area along with adding to the attraction of the downtown. Staff believes this request meets the condition of approval. And on August 12th, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to approve the request. This concludes staff's presentation. I can answer any questions from the council, and I believe Grace Garrigan, as president, would like to address the council.
You want to do it now, or you want me to ask you a question?
You can ask me a question.
Okay. All right, couple of questions. Okay. I'm real familiar with parking downtown because I have 2 parking lots that I have. If you go back to that slide that says no parking, parking only, all others will be towed at owner's expense. That isn't worth the sign it's written on. Because if you poll all of these tow trucks, they won't come do it because of the liability. So that's out the window. Historically, what I've found is if you don't have parking, people are going to park as close as they possibly can. It could be in your back door when you're trying to run your business. It can be in your driveway when you're trying to run your business. So just because you have parking spots doesn't necessarily mean people are people, and some of them don't pay any attention to signs, and they kind of do what they want to do. I'm not saying that anybody going to Grace's place would, but it is a possibility. Now, Grace can, let me ask you one other thing. Okay, this house or this place, cafe or whatever we're going to do here, okay, Matt Moore owns this house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is it his homestead?
I do not believe so.
I think it is.
Oh,
I'm sorry? He told me it was. It is, yeah. If the CAD's right, it's his homestead. So he's got to make up his mind where he lives. Does he live out of town or does he live in town? Because if Grace goes in there, whether it's B2 or B3, he's going to have to reconcile that with the Central Appraisal District. Another question on whether this goes B2 or B3, Grace could still open her cafe.
that's correct.
Okay.
If it stays B2, as long as she has the shared parking agreement in place, she can continue.
Okay. Now, if she goes B3, she doesn't have to have a parking agreement?
No.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions for you. Could you go back to the slide with the parking on Arnold Street? So, even looking at the slide, it seems like a lot of those cars, I don't know when that was taken, but the parking is occupied in there. Is that city parking, or is that TJR parking, or?
It's public parking.
It's all public parking?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I was. I also have a question about the supermajority. What does that mean? Can you tell me how many votes and all that?
So supermajority, you would have to have 4 out of the 5 approve the request before it can pass. If more than one oppose, then it's denied.
And I have one more question for you. That's it. I watched the planning and zoning meeting before, and it looked like there was some questions about the neighborhood meeting on June 6th, and I think some people said they didn't know about the neighborhood meeting. Did anybody attend?
No one attended, but no one also called us or said that they wanted to come or they weren't informed. We sent out the notices 2 weeks prior to everyone within 500 feet.
Yeah, okay. I think those neighborhood meetings are interesting. I was just really curious about that. So that's all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions? If not, I'll have the applicant come up here and present her case. If you'll state your name and your address, please.
I'm Grace Garrigan. I live at 919 Logansport Street. So I'm taking on this project with my 2 sisters, Ann and Molly, who are relocating their families from Austin to open this cafe. We were all born and raised in Nacogdoches. We all left for college and then took jobs in bigger cities, but we're thrilled to be back in East Texas with our husbands and kids. Together, we're hoping to start a family business that will be a welcome asset to the community. We're excited for a chance to serve Nacogdoches by providing a place for families and individuals alike with an emphasis on creating a child-friendly atmosphere. We're calling the business Dilly Dally, and Dilly Dally is a family-friendly coffee house where everyone can feel at home. We're going to offer coffee, snacks, and a small selection of beer in a cozy environment in our historic downtown. With child-friendly play spaces both indoors and outdoors, families and caregivers can relax and socialize without worrying about entertaining the kids or finding childcare. We also strive to create a welcoming social space for child-free adults, ensuring there's something for everyone. We have space for roughly 35 patrons indoors and 6 or 7 picnic tables in the backyard. We have 15 parking spaces now that we are renting directly adjacent to our property. We're here before you today because we are requesting a rezone of our property from B2 General Business to B3 Central Business. This rezone is part of the future use plan that Nacogdoches uses to make these decisions, and we're adjacent on 2 sides by B3 properties. This rezoning will eliminate our need for parking minimums. We, of course, plan to maintain our parking lease agreement for our patrons' convenience. It's just good for business to have it if we can. But the zone change protects our business should the parking lease be interrupted for any reason and give us time to make alternative arrangements without having our certificate of occupancy pulled. We have had 3 letters of opposition at this time, and I want to touch on their concerns. The concern that our neighbor, Mrs. Haley, has that our patrons will use her parking lot is one that we take seriously, and we have offered to put up signage on our property in front of her lot stating that her lot is private and violators will be towed with instruction to park in our lot. We met last week and asked her if we did agree to what she'd previously asked for, a 6-foot privacy fence around the entire backyard. Would she pull her opposition? And she said no. If we are rezoned, our handicap parking spot will be the first spot on our leased lot now. So it will be directly in the southeast corner of the property. There will be no way for patrons to access our property from Mrs. Haley's lot without walking down the street or around the block to our gate, because the yard will be fenced in and the entrance will be on the southern property line. However, if we're not rezoned to B3, then we'll have to have our handicap spot on our actual property, and the only place that is appropriate for that is our driveway, which is between our 2 properties, meaning we'll have to have a gate accessible for anyone parking there, which will then open up the accessibility from her parking lot to our property. Her concern that children will play in her lot can also be addressed by a fence. Let's see. With regard to protecting her parking lot from our tenants, we truly believe the rezone is in Mrs. Haley's best interest. Our neighbors to the north wrote saying that the house is unsuitable for this project, and while that is not what's being decided today, I disagree. They're upset that we plan on selling a selection of beer, saying that Nacogdoches is not ready for that and won't be for a long time. I think that the success of the Fredonia Brewery, the Nine Flags Bar, and the new distillery going in, all within a block of each other and us, contradicts this and makes the case that this area is suitable for our intended purposes. We're not creating a dive bar, but a family-friendly space where adults have the option to drink responsibly while their kids play. This is a small cafe. We're not opening a full restaurant. And as I said before, we have limited seating of 35. I really don't think this is going to cause the major traffic and noise issue that people are afraid of. We're not going to have live music, and our hours will be limited, tentatively Wednesday and Thursday 10 to 5, Fridays and Saturdays 10 to 8, and Sundays 12 to 5. We have offered to provide parking signage for all 3 of our neighbors' parking lots and driveways, and we'll have directional signage for our own parking. Anyone who parks illegally should be ticketed or towed. At the time of the planning and zoning meeting last week, we had been planning on having 1 food truck parked in our driveway serving over our east fence. Our neighbors to the north have expressed concern about having food truck in the neighborhood. So we've been rethinking this plan, and we're moving forward hoping that we can serve our food inside and have a prep kitchen instead of having to outsource that and have more noise outside. People will still be able to take their food outside to our fenced-in backyard. While few of these concerns have anything to do with rezoning or parking, we have done our best to address every concern our neighbors have. There are many successful businesses in our downtown, as you know, Mayor Johnson, and I know that Susu's Popcorn was voted best new business in Nacogdoches this year, and they have extremely limited parking. We want to contribute to our vibrant downtown. Something important I want to highlight is that this zoning issue does not affect whether or not we open. It is simply that we do not want our entire business dependent on a shared parking agreement forever. Should our access to 13 parking spaces be interrupted, our business will be forced to close. Rezoning protects us and will give us time to make other arrangements. To rezone this property is, however, in the best interest of the neighborhood for a number of other reasons. Rezoning to central business is a less intense business district, which will protect the property from one day being turned into something else, because currently it legally could be turned into a pawn shop, a mechanic, an oil change. It could have a drive-through. We do not plan on having a drive-through. Or with a special use permit, it could be a fraternity house. This house is not protected by the historic overlay, but we will preserve the history by making tasteful updates to landscaping and keeping renovations minor. We're not a music venue. We're not a restaurant. We're planning on being great neighbors. This is a passion for me and my sisters. It's not going to make us rich. We're putting all of our limited time and resources into something that Nacogdoches truly needs. As families with young kids, we have felt isolated in Nacogdoches. There are very few places for us to gather with other families. We want to make Nacogdoches more appealing to families and young people and help revitalize our downtown by increasing the time people spend here, creating more foot traffic for other downtown businesses. Even if you don't have kids, you'll still enjoy having a local family-run place to eat, drink, and socialize. And if our business isn't for you, that's okay. We will be respectful of the neighborhood, adhere to noise ordinances. Again, we're not a music venue, and we will maintain reasonable business hours.
Thank you.
Do y'all have any questions?
I think I've asked all mine.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to ask for anyone who wants to speak in favor of the request. Okay, hang on just a minute. I'll just remind you, if you'll limit your time to 3 minutes, and I request that you try not to repeat yourself for the sake of time, if you don't mind. So, If you'll come to the front, state your name and your address in 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Quinn. I live at 1226 Mark Street. I have recently moved here from Bryan, Texas, where I was practicing law. I like this town. It's a lot quieter than Bryan College Station. The traffic is easier, and it seems to me that this would be a good business for not only Nacogdoches, but especially the downtown area of Nac. I've noticed there is limited parking downtown. That seems to be an issue. Something that you guys may have to address later by building a parking building or something like that. I don't know. But I think this business would be good. But my bigger concern is this was approved 5-0 by your board. Why have the board if you're not going to use their votes? They obviously did research into this. They considered both sides before they voted, and yet it was unanimous. And I'd ask you to consider that very carefully. If you're not going to consider a unanimous yes vote, then why even have a planning and zoning board? Thank you.
Hi there, Eric Klein, 3900 Northeast Stallings Drive. I just want to frame my statement. So I say I'm a local family physician, and as such, an important part of my training is understanding what we often refer to as the biopsychosocial factors of health, or the social determinants of health. This comes up every day, all day for my patients. One of the most important things about taking care of a community, which is basically what I do to the best of my ability, is some of the features that improve the social fabric of our community.
What did you say that, what, bio what?
Biopsychosocial factors of health,
Okay.
often otherwise referred to as social determinants of health, include a lot of things. One of them being the walkability of your community, the ability to interact with other people, and a close-knit kind of physical space like Grace is proposing that she develop in this area. This is extremely important to me as I take care of my patients. This is exactly the kind of thing that many of my patients need. This has effects not just on their mental health, but on their physical health indirectly as well. Walkability, burn some calories, spend some time with your neighbors, get something that we all need in the internet age, which is becoming increasingly hard to come by, honestly, is just that ability to gather with your neighbors in a place that's close by and walkable. And I think it's hard to overstate how important this idea is, whether it's in the iteration of what Grace is proposing to do or any other form of this to our community. And I think that's a lot of what our downtown is increasingly reflecting, which I appreciate personally and on behalf of my patients. I think this would tremendously add to what downtown is, the beneficial aspects of what our downtown is growing into. I think it more than adequately fits the description of what B3 zoning describes. And I also just want to add a personal comment that I have known Grace since we were in high school together, as well as her sisters and her husband. I know them very well. And I just want to add my voice in support of their character, that even aside from their legal obligations in terms of taking care of their neighbor's parking situation, as somebody who helps run a large business myself and has friends in the community that has to run a business, I take very seriously, understand the reservations about misuse of parking, whatever signs are posted. That being said, I have every confidence that Grace and everyone else involved in the business will not just satisfy their legal obligations in terms of taking care of any violations of that type, but would go really over and above and beyond to do more than their basic obligations to help out their neighbors and make sure that their clientele is adequately informed and held accountable for how they use those parking spaces. That's all my comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Orton. I live at 2320 Tanglewood Circle. I'm here to express my support for the zoning change to B3 for the house at 216 Church Street. I believe that this change will facilitate the success of the new family-oriented business to be created there. I am familiar with this house, built in 1888, and it is perfectly suited for this usage. I can't think of a more appropriate use for this historical property combining both a neighborhood feeling with a commercial enterprise. Most of the property surrounding the house is already zoned B3, as we've heard, including about 2/3 of the block on which the property in question is located. What is the logic that would exclude making this property B3 as well? The hotel is directly across the street to the west, and a commercial strip and parking lot is located to the south. Both are B3. The 2-year lease on parking that the coffee shop has in the lot to the south provides no permanent solution to the problem. After 2 years, what may then be a successful small business could be forced to close for no reason having to do with the business itself. The city of Nacogdoches supports the creation of small businesses. This is the perfect opportunity to prove it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Callie Childress, and I live at 203 East Parker. I live at 203 East Parker Road. I grew up in Nacogdoches, and a little over a year ago, I moved back here from the Central Texas area with my husband, Ivory, to be closer to my parents and my sister. I have known the Garrigan family my whole life, and our families were always intertwined growing up. The Garrigans are kind and respectful people with good values. They believe in being good neighbors and giving back to the community we all know and love. I can guarantee that they will put their hearts and souls into Dilly Dally because it is who they are. Anne, Molly, and Grace are the kind of people you want running a business in Nacogdoches. They have put thought and consideration into not only what this town wants, but also what the people of this town need. I regularly hear young adults around me talk about how few kid-friendly activities or spaces there are in this town. And if you go onto any of the Nacogdoches Facebook pages, there are countless posts and comments talking about how there are little to no kid-friendly places in this town, and the solution is to go to surrounding towns. When the business idea seems to be a no-brainer, and the people running this business are good people who care about the integrity of this town, who value this community and the future of Nacogdoches, who are trying to provide something this town wants and needs. It seems like the best way to go about this is to take the steps necessary to ensure that at some point down the line, something as silly as parking wouldn't be the reason Dilly Dally would maybe have to be shut down. If all we have to do is change the zoning from B2 to B3, which is the standard zoning for the businesses in that area anyway, it makes perfect sense to me that we would pass it and do whatever it takes to ensure longevity for something that will ultimately bring life and growth to our community. Thank you, guys.
Okay, I am gonna time myself because I know I get a little long-winded, so we're just gonna put that little time clock right there. Oh, you got me. Oh, looky there, Camilla, you do that then. My name is Hunter Sowards. My address is 1130 39th Street, Sacramento, California, but I'm speaking today on behalf of Susu's Popcorn, so the Sowards family, which I am free labor for more often than probably half of my siblings who work there full-time. Not really, they work very hard. But I'm excited to talk about this because I think when Mayor Johnson was running for office, he said he was looking forward to working together towards growth in Nacogdoches, and that is growth that we have seen come to fruition in such a short amount of time, and it's been so exciting to see. And to have another family-oriented and family-owned business wanting to open here is also so fantastic. We're talking about a situation where two sisters have moved back home to join alongside their baby sister and make this dream come true. Sadly, we've been told by one council member that we as citizens and constituents don't understand the intricacies and the inner dealings that have caused some council members to now oppose this. So without understanding that, we don't have a chance to find compromise. And early on in my work as a journalist, I learned that the true value of transparency, how important it is for everyone to learn and to understand the inner workings of local government. And I think we have a chance to come together on this one. I really feel like this is the time to find common ground. It's a boost to tourism. It reinvests money back into our local economy. It gives visitors another chance to come back, another reason to come back. And every time I come home to NAC from California, I am so excited to look outside and stunned by the growth, to see the new businesses, but also to see the ones that have gotten better as time has gone on. That's really where this excites me, because I know after watching the success of Susu's, Dilly Dally is the next best business to spur our city's continued growth. This is a store where children and toddlers and young adults can come and play in the background with their parents sitting right next to them, while young adults, college students, can also find community in their own way. It's a place where everybody feels like they have a seat. And I think we need more places like that. And to think what's holding this up or infringing on a dream is challenges with parking. We don't understand, but supporters of this venture want to. And we think that we can really all come to the table and find a successful solution. And then we can all take a step towards progress. Because I really feel like the success of citizens of Nacogdoches who benefit from the fruits of this labor, the revenue and taxes, returning in-town guests, that growth is something we all benefit from. And I don't even really think that this is something to fight over. I mean, we may be a small town, but we are bigger and better than a parking disagreement. And if there's one thing that I've learned growing up in Nacogdoches, regardless of how far I go, I will always value the core principles that I was raised on here. And those principles include the golden rule, and they include the principle of the fact that when one person wins, we all win. And I want to see the businesses surrounding Dilly Dally, who I love and adore in and of themselves, I want to see them succeed as much as I want it for Dilly Dally. And thankfully, success is not a finite resource. There's enough for everyone. And when one of us rises, I think we can all rise. So that's why I really hope that we can find that common ground on whatever the issue is. Thank you.
My name is Juan Lopez, 623 Logan Sports Street. I'm a small business owner and operate in Nacogdoches. I know firsthand the difficulties that come with starting a new business and how support from the community and the city can make the world of a difference in getting off the ground. This zone change request from B2 to B3 has little impact on the surrounding property owners, who are more intent on placing barriers to a new business opening than caring about how the lot is zoned. And it is a reasonable request that is in line with what the future use plan envisions for this specific lot. That is why the city planner recommended this approval, and that is why the Planning and Zoning Commission approved it unanimously. So, let's be clear about what this dispute is really about. The applicant isn't requesting a zone change because she does not want to provide parking for her patrons. She already has signed a lease for exactly that. She is requesting a zone change so that in the event Mr. Barham does not agree to renew the lease in the future, she won't immediately go out of business. It is clear that the opposition's concern is not about parking. Rather, it is about putting every obstacle in the applicant's path so that she won't be able to open her business at all. Sounds pretty anti-small business, anti-family business, anti-local business to me. And from what I've heard, this council holds itself out to be the opposite of all those things. I hope you vote according to the principles you claim to espouse. I ask that you support this small, local, family business and vote for this reasonable zone change. Please, don't be yet another barrier to the natural, orderly development of our city. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Walt Polstlewaite. My wife and I live at 222 North Mound Street. We look basically kind of diagonally straight up Edwards at the subject property. I'm here supporting the zone change, but not because of what the Garrigans are planning. It's not a cafe or no cafe conversation. Frankly, it's not a parking, no parking conversation. This conversation is not for a special use permit. which those would cover. This is zoning. So zoning is agnostic of a specific business. It is what makes the best use in and around the surrounding properties. And so when this hit my radar, and we're within the 200-foot notice, I didn't know how I felt. So I started reading. And one did the reading of the zoning B2 and B3, so I'm not going to read it word for word. But what struck me when I was looking at the zoning is B2 is to accommodate those businesses' activities that are oriented toward the automobile. It also goes on to say that these districts are located along major traffic arteries where there are strip businesses, development enterprises. I don't think Church Street and Edwards rises to the definition of what was that? Major traffic arteries. So right there I started thinking, well, maybe B2 is not the right zoning for this. So then I read what B3 is. B3 is to accommodate and enhance the commercial activities in the central area. This is in the central area. And to promote the downtown as a pedestrian-oriented destination, which is what they are seeking to do. And most importantly, that the district is intended to build on the area's historic heritage and character. So to me, that's very, very important. This property, even though it's not in a historic district, it is next to two historic districts. It was already mentioned that B3 zoning is on two sides of this property. I live in a historic district, and I can tell you from my front porch, the southwest corner of Edwards and Mound has a commercial use property there. Half the lot's paved over for parking. I look this other direction at the southwest corner, seems to be a theme with southwest corners, but the southwest corner there is also a commercial use building with half the lot paved over for parking. I would argue that in this area, having a property that is half paved over for parking does not, let's reread this, does not lead and enhance nor preserve the historic heritage and character of that neighborhood. So right there, by your definitions, I'm convinced that B3 is most appropriate. Again, this isn't about cafe or parking. So then when I started looking, and the supermajority vote is really fascinating. And so when I started looking at the comments, the major property owner that has the, basically is triggering it, when you read their comments, they're basically saying, we want them to play by the same rules we had to play by. Well, they're B3. So again, I would encourage a unanimous vote on this because, and I'm a layperson, I will admit that, but I don't see how this could stay in B2 since the question has been raised in the request to make it B3. Thank you.
Good evening. Michael Stidham, 124 Walker Avenue. My wife and I moved back here 10 years ago. This is our 5th time to live in Nacogdoches. We keep coming back. And when we lived here last, I was in the mid-90s. At that time, I was a regional vice president for TCA Cable TV, and after that, Cox Communications. I was responsible for 50 cable TV franchises with city councils across the state of Texas. Y'all don't have to deal with that anymore, thank goodness. Well, maybe not thank goodness, you might have some control. My point being is this. My general managers and myself had priorities to provide good customer service, but we also had responsibility to grow the business. So we knew our communities, and we knew our city councils, and we made sure that every move that we did would help grow the business. I'll tell you here, right now, there were communities that we dealt with that were not progressive. They chose not to make moves best for their own community. And as of running a major cable operation, that would make us sort of pause and go, if the city council doesn't want to grow the business, then maybe we don't put the investment in that community down the road. because we were a publicly traded company, and we needed to make money. My point being is this. I'm going to read you some statistics. 99.8% of Texas's 3.1 million businesses are small businesses, with 1.25 million owned by women. Hispanic and minority account for more than 2 million businesses. And finally, small businesses employ 45% of the private workforce, or 49 million employees. So I urge you, I have never met Ms. Grace Garrett. All I know is that it's more than just this community. There are businesses and services that look at you guys and look at our community and see, are they doing the right thing to grow this community? I urge you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Debbie Wayland. I live at 216 North Mound. So we're about half a block from the property that's in terrible condition. And when we moved here, we've lived a lot of different places. And so we always look for resale value. And as I looked around, I was very concerned about potential resale value for our house, because we've got Miss Haley's building across the street, we've got the parking lot, we've got the brewery, and so that's a big thing. It's been amazing. We love it. There's never a problem with parking, even for big events. We love the walkability. We love all of that. It would scare me to death to put in a business with a drive-through or an automotive background for my property value. So please consider our property values. Let's keep the downtown special and unique and desirable, but keep it from pawn shops, auto zones, and whatever else could go in there. So consider our property values, please.
Hello, my name is Bridget Kozash. I currently live at 410 Harris Street, but I'm moving to 411 Richardson Street. I wanted to talk today about how I kind of know Grace. I didn't really meet Grace first. I actually met her dad first. And the reason I met her dad was because when I graduated from SFA in 2017, he gave me my first job out of graduating, which was scary, a scary time. I was very nervous. Paying bills was scary. But Mr. Garrigan, Tim, I'm going to call him Tim, he trusted me to fulfill that job as a legal assistant for 3 years until I was ready to start my own small business. I remember when I first started making stained glass art and various other art as well, I would come into work every day, not every day, but like several days a week, and I'd show him what I made and often give him things and be like, look what I did. And he would be like, that is so awesome. He would encourage me so much. And I remember the day where I was like, okay, I need to tell Tim that I think it's time for me to jump from this to being a small business, because I had clientele. And it was very empowering. It was very helpful. And it was his encouragement and several other people's encouragement that led me to do that. And I just want to mention that because being empowered by your community to be a small business, to start a small business, is so important. It's very valuable, and it's what keeps you from closing. It's what keeps you from giving up, and it's what keeps you from just like, it keeps you pushing through the hard, like slow times. So I just wanted to say that because Tim, I have to come here today to support Grace, as she supported me by buying my glass in the past. Because Tim, her dad, supported me, you know, and that's very valuable. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention as well. So I'm also the co-founder of Firehouse Knack, which is 2 blocks away from this location on Swift Street. We have 2 parking spaces, 3 if you squeeze, and that's like really tight. 3 parking spaces. There's street parking as well. It's very little street parking, but we do have it. We're next door to an Airbnb, which we cannot park in. To Corey's Towing, which we cannot park in unless we ask them, which we have done, and they let us when we have big parties. And it's worked out. We've had probably over 150 people there. I got married next door at that Airbnb, and there were more than 150 people there. And people walked. People don't mind walking. People parked at the brewery. People park in the city parking downtown. And a lot of those people, before they came to my wedding and before they come to the firehouse for sure, they go to the brewery. They went to Cowboy Jack's when it was open. They go to the Fredonia Hotel, which is often where a lot of my guests stayed. And they walk over. It's not hard to do, and I don't think it's a big expectation. And so I do think that, you know, leaving the power of parking in the hands of one person by not approving this is dangerous. It's not fair. The risk of Grace's business closing down because of one person and their decision, I don't think is a fair thing to do. And I think that we should, I encourage y'all to support a small business because it has been amazing for me. I've been a small business for 3 years. And I look at this meeting and I look at past meetings I've been to and I see these special use permits being requested, and it makes me afraid of the time when I'm gonna need a brick and mortar, because that's something I'm working towards. I'm 2 months from paying off all of my debt that I've been working to pay off just so I could apply for a small business loan so I can open a business of my own. And I see this and I see past experiences and it makes me worried. And I really hope that y'all make the decision today in support of Grace, because you're setting an example for future small business owners. So thank you so much.
We can hear you.
In this now, yeah, okay. I'll speak loud.
We can hear you.
Tilt it close so that people, you know.
Okay, so can you just stand a little bit? I don't know if I can reach it. Okay, my name is Ann Keenan, and I live at 609 East Hospital Street, right around the corner. A lot of my neighbors come up here and spoke. The first thing I want to say to all of you is I want to remind you that your job is to speak for the whole community, for all of Nacogdoches. And I know that individual landowners and homeowners are going to speak up for their property and try to fight for what they want for themselves. But your job is to look out for more than that and for what's best for all of our community. And with that in mind, as someone who's lived for the better part of 25 years around here, I wanted to say that I see parking lots everywhere. I see little flat gray parking lots, little ones, big ones, and they're never full. No, as several people have said, no one has to walk that far to get where they're going. Yes, there's not enough parking spaces if you want to park right next to the front door of the place you want to go to. But there are plenty of parking spaces, and I don't think we need to use our precious downtown real estate. We want our downtown to be beautiful, to grow, as we've heard, and asking someone to change their yard into a parking lot is the opposite of that, for sure. And finally, I just wanted to echo what so many of the young people coming up here have said, and Dr. Klein in particular, that this is what our families and our community need. I meet people all the time who talk about how friendly Nacogdoches is, how open we are, how easy we are to get along with. And I think that's because we have places we can walk around and meet people. I met a young couple from France just last weekend at the brewery. They were staying at the Hardeman House, and they talked about how friendly it was. But if there wasn't a place where they could interact with people, they wouldn't even know how friendly we are. So we need places like that. I know Kathleen and I probably would have loved to have a little coffee shop at the playground when our kids were little. So I hope that you're able to do everything you can to support Grace in this and to support the whole town of Nacogdoches in giving us what's best for our community. Thank you.
Okay, Maggie.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm going to be repeating what a lot of people have already said, but I just want to put a punctuation mark on a couple of points that have been made. One is that you have B3 to the west and the south, so really this is a natural expansion of the downtown business area, which it's my understanding that that's what we want. We want a growing downtown business area. Secondly, leaving this property as B2, which some other people have pointed out, is really very dangerous because the property owner could tear down his historic house and put a gas station or an auto repair shop there or something that absolutely nobody wants by right. So he would have the right to do that. So changing it to B3 is actually protecting our downtown area more. Also, we're always talking about attracting young people to downtown, and I think that a lot of young people are moving to the area, and I can't think of a better business model than a family-friendly, recreational business that will bring those young people to the downtown area. And I'm struggling to understand why y'all wouldn't support that. Now, if it comes down to the parking, this is a problem that needs to be addressed because B3 obviously doesn't have parking requirements. So maybe looking forward, the city could either modify the parking requirements or maybe obtain some more parking areas. And I just really hope that you approve this business. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori McDuffie. I live at 1226 Mark Street. And one of the things that I really appreciate about NAC coming in from another town 2 years ago was all of its historic buildings. It pained me to know that a lot of the beautiful architecture had already been torn down in lieu of Subway, Starbucks, and things like that. Things that really don't bring a lot of culture or beauty to the city. And I feel like using this building as that type of business would help people walk to there and enjoy it. I mean, I'll never drink at a Starbucks because it's a chain, it's yucky. This is more family oriented. And I feel like one of the things that I just loved about NAC was how historic it was. And I feel like we need to work on keeping it that way. Thank you.
Okay. That it? Okay.
My name is Mitch Mitchell. I'm at 13121 FM 1878. Although I live in the county, I'm in Nacogdoches every day. I moved here with my family about 2 years ago. My wife, our 3 young daughters. We are friends with the Garrigans. We are also the kind of people who are interested in the vitality of a healthy downtown like Nacogdoches. We've lived lots of places. We chose to come back to Nacogdoches for family. We are heavily invested in seeing this community support small business. And I feel like this is an easy way to call Nacogdoches bluff on whether it does support small business, whether it does support local economic development. I've heard lots of talk about parking. It's interesting to me here that with respect to the parking requirements, the people who have opposed this don't actually have a good faith reason for why parking should put somebody else's business in jeopardy. The Fredonia, which I patronize often, has B3 zoning. The property owner who is concerned about people parking on her property, she's asking, in essence, to make the city enforce her right to her private property. I don't think that's what zoning is for. And so I asked for the city to do the right thing here and support economic development, support somebody investing in this community. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Now we'll ask for someone to speak against the request. Ms. Haley, do you want to start? Okay. And you don't have 3 minutes.
I don't have to,
No.
okay, thank you, I was concerned. My name is Connie Haley,
and I own the office building on the corner of Mound and Edwards, 217 North Mound Street. My goodness, I am not opposed to small business coming into Nacogdoches. I am all for it. And I don't want anybody to think that I am trying to stand in the way of anybody developing their dream. That is not at all my goal here. Let me give you a little background about me, just real quick. I have founded, owned, and operated 2 small businesses in Nacogdoches over the last 30 years. I started in 1993 with Haley Media, which later became Point A Media. And then in 2003, I started Haley Art and Design. In 2004, 20 years ago, I bought this building on the corner of Mound and Edwards, and I moved my art licensing business into it and operated from that location for 20 years. It's been great. I've enjoyed a very successful career. At the end of 2023, I decided to retire from the art licensing aspect of my business, and at that point started kind of transitioning my building into kind of a real estate development project and licensing or leasing out office space in my building to a variety of small independent contractors, to women growing a business for themselves. I have 3 tenants right now that provide health and beauty treatments for their customers. And they're busy. Their customers come and go all day long. And I have room in my building. I still keep an office there and a small art studio. I have room in my building for more tenants, and I plan to bring them in. My goal in protesting the zone change is not to stop them from doing whatever they want to do, but so that I can protect my private property for the access that my tenants will need and use on a daily basis. The tenants that I have now who've all said that their businesses are flourishing since moving into my location. And any tenants that I bring in the future, which will bring more traffic into my parking lot with their customers or clientele that come and go all day long. So my concern is that if the neighboring property has absolutely no obligation to provide any parking for their customers, they still show up in a car. They still have to leave it somewhere. And my parking lot is immediately adjacent to the backyard of the property that they're discussing. It is the most obvious place that anybody would choose to park if they're going to dilly-dally. There's no wall or fence in between the two. It's, readily available. And at the moment, it's almost never full because I don't have my building full of tenants yet. That will change. One of the main reasons that my tenants chose to lease from me is because I could provide them with parking. Because 2 of them came from a downtown location that was Zone B3. They had no guaranteed parking, and it was a problem for their customers. So they moved from there to my office building, and their businesses are flourishing because their customers know they can pull in. They have a guaranteed spot. They can pull up to the door. My concern is that if the neighbor has no obligation to provide parking, all those people will park in my lot. And then the business development opportunities for my tenants will become limited because suddenly one of the main reasons that they wanted to move into my building is no longer a guarantee. They don't know if they're going to have parking for their customers or not. And as I grow my business and as they grow their business, this will be an ever-increasing issue. This will become more and more of a problem as time goes on. Now, I'm fully aware of the spots in Mr. Barham's lot that they have secured, which is great because as I find their customers in my parking lot, I'll have somewhere to send them. I can suggest that they go park around there, which is where they're supposed to. If they don't have that, I won't have anywhere to send them. They're just going to be in my lot. And my goal is to provide the best possible environment for my tenants to grow and flourish. They are small business owners. They're working really hard to grow their businesses. They are independent contractors trying to make ends meet. And I promised them when they signed leases with me that I could provide them with the parking that they needed. Now, that is my goal in moving forward as I continue to develop my small real estate project. And I will have at least 3 or 4 more tenants as time goes on. What my future business plan will not include is undue stress on the neighborhood, discomfort for the neighbors, or any obstacles to adjoining businesses. Their plan will cause all of those things, and changing the zoning will only exacerbate that. So please help me protect my customers, my tenants, and their customers so that their businesses can flourish.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Jackson?
Mayor, just a point of clarification. Are we not requiring 3 minutes on the opposition also?
I gave her open time. You'll have 3 minutes. Because we did the same thing to Ms. Garrigan. We gave her all the time that she needed, and then everybody else had 3 minutes, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Pardon me?
That's not appropriate. You're good. Go ahead.
Ask yourself why you wanted as many people.
Address the council, please.
Jerry Jackson is my name, and I live north of the property, north of Edward Street. I live facing Church Street, but the side of my house is alongside the Moore's house.
Mr. Jackson, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Only 3 minutes?
Only 3 minutes, yes, sir.
Okay, I've sent all of my arguments already to you.
Yes, sir.
So I don't have to go through those. Would you like to ask me questions? I was going to tell the audience why its actions today show you were either solicited or you volunteered to come in. Of course, the audience is trying to weigh the evidence. What does it matter if you were a friend in high school to the person who's putting the business in? The zoning law knows nothing about that. Why does it matter if you think that your plans are going to be something and then you will reserve chance to change them? When we were told about this project, Matt Moore and Grace said it was going to be a coffee house that was friendly to children with playground in the backyard. Now, I know the area and the zoning in the area, and I should, because I put in the zoning laws here in Nacogdoches. This building is saved because, in large part, of what I argued. I wrote the historic zoning laws that protect businesses, structures, in the downtown area and in the north. And it's wonderful when someone comes and says, I love this and I just want to save it and everything else. 55 years I've lived here doing this. And I've lived in peace with the Fredonia. I've lived in peace with neighbors who had businesses, eye clinics, rental property. I'm not opposed to any of those things. The lot is simply too small. If it's going to put in a filling station, it's going to have more land. If it puts in an auto repair shop there, it's going to have more land. The purpose of zoning is to protect your neighbors, to make good fences, make good neighbors. And you don't want something on a particular property that is going to impinge on other property. Now, we're talking about impinging on other properties. The 3 properties close to this building, all of them have objected to it. And it's not just parking, it's noise, it's sanitation, it's other things that go along with this. It is a very small piece of property. I'm shocked that the creation of the historical zoning group did not put a zone over it. The least you could do, if you're going to change it, is put a historic zoning over the house so that they don't have the right to tear it down. Anyone in that area, including my house, which has a historic zone, if you...
Got to wrap it up.
Okay. I can still tear it down. Do you have any questions? Well, I've got more to say, but it's obvious that the audience doesn't want to hear that.
We'll have we're gonna have discussion, and we may bring you back up for questions. Okay. All right. Somebody's got another one. Yeah, okay. Ms. Jackson, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Sarah Jackson.
Pull that down.
My name is Sarah Jackson. I live at 304 North Church. I've lived across the street from the Moore family for over 50 years. My husband and I, and Fran and Ed Moore, and Chuck and Ann Phillips, and Miss Gladys Hardeman were all good friends. We worked very hard to save any number of houses on Mound Street or in our adjacent area. We are the historic folk that a lot of people, say, oh, get out of here. But really, we have done everything we can for the last 54 years to make it a historic district and suitable to that. As my husband mentioned, or really another speaker, transparency was a word mentioned. There was no transparency in this. We were told an indoor coffee house and little children playing in the backyard. That has morphed into an outdoor eatery with beer, and I guess wine too, and little children playing. Now, I can't see that that's consistent. To have a play area for little children with people at tables drinking beer, I'm sorry, I don't see that as a good neighborly move. I'm not opposed to this business or to the Garrigan family. I just think they have selected the wrong location to maintain a historic district that we've lived happily with for 54 years. This is the first time we have ever come before a city commission complaining, and it's because it's not a good business model. The property's too small for all of the things they're trying to do. If they can shove everything inside that house, it would be better. The other thing, right quick, because the clock is ticking, this is a fire lane. Edward Street and North Church are so important, not only to the Fredonia Hotel, but to all of us in wood houses, and we're all there. One catches fire, good luck to the rest of us. Those are fire lanes. Those people will park there, and it will be very dangerous. So I want you to please, as the one lady said, consider the whole community. Consider those of us who've lived there for 54 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Okay. Rhonda, what do I do now? Close the public hearing and then have the council have discussion?
Yep, one more.
Okay, all right.
Good afternoon. My name's Clayton Haley. I'm married to Connie. So obviously I'm here to support her position, or it'd be very uncomfortable at home. I see a lot of people here I know, a lot of people I love, and many of them are on the other side of this issue, and I certainly understand that. Garrigans are good people. I've known the dad, known the girls, I've known so many of the people that sat up here and spoke and everything, and I respect their opinions. But there's a difference, and the difference is when you're talking about private property, people understand in the abstract, but when it touches their reality, when the abstract becomes your reality, it changes things. When you're the one who potentially is going to be stuck having to support or subsidize somebody else's business because they don't have the space to do it, then that becomes a real problem. In essence, you would be picking one business over another business. You're going to be choosing winners and you're going to be choosing losers. And I heard Mr. Quinn I think make the statement that you have a planning and zoning commission that had a unanimous recommendation. Well, I don't know, maybe we should just disband the city councils, even though y'all are the elected officials and they're not, if all you're gonna do is rubber stamp whatever it is that they told you to do, rather than exercising your own independent judgment and knowledge on these things, because that is what you were elected to do. And you are expected to look after all of the citizens. You are expected to respect and protect private property rights. What are those private property rights? Those private property rights involve a whole lot of things, and I'm not going to go into a legal dissertation on this, but obviously at the end of the day, as everyone has pointed out, my wife's parking lot is immediately adjacent to where their facility is going to be. And obviously, given that locale, people are going to pick the easiest place to park. You can put signs up, you can put fences up, but we know what's going to happen. They are going to park along the streets. That's just what people do. And people normally don't have an issue with businesses going in and having a thriving population and helping the economic environment here unless it impacts them directly. If any one of these people was in a similar situation and people were blocking their driveway, were blocking their property based upon someone else's use of it that's adjacent to them, they wouldn't want to put up with that. So as long as a business is going to be able to support and substantiate itself, that's fine. But when you ultimately are going to have to call upon others to absorb the costs, to take over the obligation or the burden that your business may produce, then that's not an appropriate thing. As someone pointed out, it's almost like putting a square peg in a round hole. You've got a very small facility there. You have a very small amount of acreage upon which they can run this business. Maybe it's not the right location for it. No one's here that I've heard is anti-business or is against businesses, but some places are just not the right spot for the right time for the business that someone is seeking to have. So you have to keep all those things in mind when you're looking at this. Are you going to protect everyone? Are you going to support the private property rights of those who've already spent the money here? Thank you.
All right, I think that's everybody. We'll close the public hearing and we'll go to discussion amongst the council. And I'd like to start out, if you don't mind. I wrote down several things, and I'm the one that sold the business to Susu's Popcorn, and they are very, very dear friends of mine, and I have encouraged them from day one. I have helped them with parking. I have helped them with trash. I have done everything that I possibly can to make that business successful, and it is, because they have a great product and they work extremely hard. With that being said, parking is an issue. And let me say this before I even start talking about it. This has nothing to do with Miss Garrigan's integrity. It has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with if you went to school with her, if you have known her for 20 years. We know who she is. We know her father. She's lived here all of her life, you know. This has nothing to do with integrity or what she's planning on doing. She's done the homework. She's got a business plan. Now it's up to her to make sure that it works or it doesn't. There are plans in the works for additional parking downtown. I can't talk about it now. Will it be right on top of this business that you're planning on opening? No, it won't. You'll have to walk. But there are plans. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No, but it is in the works. The last thing I wanted to say is, or a couple of things, is the sticking point on this is because I live it every single day is parking. And I have to deal with it primarily on the back part of my business. And if you haven't lived it, you know, you really can't talk about it because it's a very, very troubling situation. And People don't care. They can park right in your back door and they could care less whether you're there, what you're doing, where you have to go, or what time it is. I see it every single day. Miss Garrigan can open her business, whether it be B2 or B3. You know, she's just gonna have to have the required parking for it to be in B2. So we're not stopping her from opening this business and it being successful. Later on down the road, you know, there's a possibility, as far as I'm concerned, that she could probably maybe go to B3. But I would encourage you to get the homestead issue cleared up with your landlord, okay? That's all I have to say. I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Pardon me? Okay. Oh, I still can't hear her, so go ahead.
Well, I have something to say. It's obvious where the power is in this room today. I mean, you brought a lot of people to support. It's going to happen eventually, probably. But day after tomorrow, we start working in a workshop about zoning, and not just about changing zoning, but also changing the guidelines so that something like B2 is not going to let you do an auto mechanic or a gas station or something like that. Guidelines are much easier to change than zoning, but we're going to attack all of it. But what's going on here today is that a large group of people, maybe perhaps the majority, obviously the majority in this room, favors something where they don't have to follow the rules that have been in place and they want to change the rules. We're trying to fix the rules day after tomorrow. Do you want me to continue or just?
Hang on just a minute. Please, we've offered everyone respect. I ask that you do the same thing to the council members, please.
And my job is in part to protect the least of the people. And I never thought I would say that the person that owns the building would be the least of the people, but lately it has been that way. And let me just explain. I give more weight to the property owners directly around that building, the people that are going to have to live with it every day, as opposed to someone that wants to come into town, doesn't pay city taxes, doesn't have to live with the garbage and the rodents and all the other things that come with a restaurant and things, and lives out on Farm Road, whatever. You have your voice. But let me say, to the north, your neighbor to the north has lived in there 50-plus years. Like they said, they have fought for you. They have fought for the place that you love and want to open a restaurant in. And they were told that it was a coffee shop for young families with children. And it changed, and you laugh because she says beer, but changing where you drink and where you eat changes the nature of the place. And they also have their current opposition on the north of this property is that food trucks are going to be parked in an unpaved backyard. So with that comes attendant noise of electrical generators, exhaust fans from cooking, but it's also up to 35 people, children and adults, using the backyard area from, 11 a.m. till maybe 10 p.m., 9 p.m., 11 to 12, I don't know. 8 o'clock then, okay. And then you're serving food on an unpaved lot. So when the food drops on the ground, how do you spray that off or clean that off? I mean, these are things that the people on the north have to think about, that they live right there. When you have food on unpaved ground or not inside a restaurant, you're going to attract rodents, whether it's rats or raccoons or whatever else, you're going to have to deal with that. You've got the smell, not of garbage once a week when you put it out on the street, but you have it every day. And how many of you have a car in here, if you want to raise your hand? Every single one of you has a car. We live in Nacogdoches. It's a rural place. It's 100 degrees outside, and yeah, I can park my car and walk across the street into city council, but for me to walk from my house to here would probably be a stroke at my age. So yes, you want a walkable city. Maybe it will be someday. Maybe we'll air condition the streets, but it ain't happening right now. And also, you have an emergency, like they said, you have emergency vehicles because you have a hotel next door to it. And to the south of this property, so that was the north side, literally the driveway and the house to the north of this property. To the south, you have a strip mall with a large parking lot, and you have a lease for that parking, so you can open your place that you want to. Nobody is closing this down. It's just we're not changing zoning. We have a zoning meeting in 2 days. All right, so the Rusty Spur is in that strip mall, Oasis Salon, soon to be a distillery. All of them are required to have parking. Why should you not be required to have parking? And if you say, well, he can tear down this historic house that he has the homestead on and build a filling station, well, that's sort of being held up by extortion. And you don't have to be held up that way. That's why we're here to make these decisions. So north is a problem. South of that business is a problem. To the east, on Fredonia Hotel, has more than 100 spaces. They're opposed to this. So you have north, south, east is opposed to it, the people most directly affected. And to the west, you have Mrs. Haley's place, and that has 15 parking spaces. And like they said, people are going to park where they park. And also, she's concerned about people parking in her lot that's going to be used by her customers. So maybe there wouldn't be anybody in there at night, but what about the daytime when people that work and come and visit there are going to be there? And also, she said in her letter there's a reluctance to build a 6-foot privacy fence between the two properties because you want your customers not to feel hemmed in. It has a very kind of privileged sort of rules for thee, but not for me kind of feeling to it. And I know you're going to change this eventually. And growth is hard. But if you push the people that have tried to build the city that you love so much out, you know, it's a little bad karma going on. So you're surrounded directly by 3 sides by people who are in opposition and one who has a financial interest. And you can still open your business. You just have to take the same chances everybody else had. And I think that you could wait 2 more days till Thursday and let us start working then. And I'm so amazed. I love it that all of you show up here and that you're active and you're involved. That's great. But you have to think about, for the first time actually, you were always the oppressed, pushing against that, and these older, wealthy people were the powerful ones. Well, now the story's flipped. Sometimes the older people are now the people that don't have the power anymore. And I am not in favor of you pushing them out of town just so that you have a little better, more fun time. So someday, we'll all die. But until then, I'm not going to vote for this.
No, ma'am, we're in discussion right now.
So, this, first of all, I'm going to try and direct as much of my commentary to the council as possible. This is a decision that we are going to make one way or another. I will say to the audience, this process exists for a reason. It gives people the opportunity to come and voice their opinions for and against a particular position. And then all of these issues that you brought to us, we get to try and grapple with those. I've tried to sit back and listen and try and be objective on this. Mayor, you're right. I don't own anything downtown. I don't own anything anywhere in this part of town. And so it doesn't impact me directly. And, you know, we are gonna have a meeting in 2 days, and we're gonna talk about what the zone changes, or what we're going to do with zoning going forward. This is the second workshop we've had that discussion on. And I will also agree that we're not talking about personalities, we're not talking about character, we're talking about interpretation of our zoning ordinance, and whether we should zone something from B2 to B3. Is it consistent with our future land use plan to move this property to B3? Yes, that's what they said 20 years ago, that this should go to B3. And maybe when it was zoned originally, it should have been B3 and not B2. But that's not where we are today. We are charged with making a decision for what this land will be, potentially in perpetuity. Because as many of us know, zoning runs with the land. Right? So whatever is on that land, the person who owns it makes the decision of the things they can do by right. I've said it in previous zoning cases, and I'll say it today. Protecting neighborhoods is very important. 100% we need to protect the property owners around. I'm not sure that B2 does that. And we have the opportunity to change it to B3. That may not be the will of the council tonight, but something that I think everyone in the room probably agrees on is that this business can go forward and be successful. We've seen businesses with adversity, with not having any parking on Main Street, be incredibly successful. But whether we think the business will be successful should not even enter into our discussion. What we should discuss are the merits of the actual zone change. And we've talked in many zone cases before about residential cases where we want to protect neighborhoods and we don't want to move to more intense uses of zoning. We don't want to try and move a whole lot more things to R4 and protect single-family homes. Well, this is a less intense zoning change. This is a down zoning. B2 to B3 is a down zone. So if our principles are the same, then we should move from B2 to B3. That's all I have to say.
I just agree that we should change from B2 to B3 for the simple reason that everything around it is already there. So why are we singling out this one particular issue? We're here now, so let's make a decision that makes sense. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to vote for it.
So for me, this is a very, very hard decision for me. And I did watch the planning and zoning meeting, and I was so surprised that not once was it mentioned that zoning goes with the property. And one of my concerns about so I want to stop and say, just reiterate, that I love Grace, I love Levi. I don't know Levi as well as I know you, Grace, but I love your whole family, and that none of that enters into my decision, for or against or whatever. I think it's so interesting, all the letters we get, and I want to direct this to y'all, because the letters that come to us from our dearest friends and from some of them who are for this zone change and some who are against, I really wish you wouldn't suppose our motivations. That is really a problem. I just thought I'd tell you. My husband told me don't do that, don't say it, but I will say it. When you suppose bad motivations either way, it's really not helpful. Because like a good Irishman, when you accuse me of doing something, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I thought, if you tell me that if I anyway, so please don't assume that we vote either way because, we're good or bad people. So I really wanted to say that. I also wanted to take the opportunity to talk about my favorite letter because I also love our small town, and It does have peace, stillness, laughter, joy, sadness, companionship, and kindness, and that's for all of us. And I look forward to the coffee shop with small children, and I hope it has croissants and cafe au lait. And I hope to walk there, if you'll have me, however I vote. I did not come having made my decision before I got here. I really wanted to hear everything, so I just thought I'd share that with you. So the one thing that in doing my research about B3, about central business and general business, I was struck with the realization that if you have general business, it's because everybody kind of shares this parking area. And when I was thinking about this particular space, the businesses around the area all have parking, and this particular space does not. So it's kind of like a lopsided sharing, and that influences my thinking about whether it should be B2 or B3. I know I hope you all are following me, but like downtown, you're not following. Okay, let me back up. Downtown, you have all these businesses, and they all share all of these spaces. Whereas when you get to this particular property, the hotel has its parking, and the neighbors all have their parking, but this particular spot doesn't have parking to share. So that enters into it, unless they actually have the contract and are required to have that. So we're talking about requiring it or not requiring it. So to me, that influences my thinking. So I know everybody in this room loves new businesses, creative businesses, family, but this is zoning, and it goes with the land, and I am concerned about what happens in the future if there's not this business but another business, and what would they do surrounding parking. And that really is the biggest issue, is parking. But having said that, it's still a very difficult situation. I don't think whatever we do tonight is holding it up. I don't think whatever we do tonight is going to infringe on your dream, and I hope it really, really works out. And I think the only other thing I wanted to ask is if Mr. Jackson had something else. I will ask you whatever question. I think it's only fair that you've been here for so long and you have saved so much of our city. I will ask you if you have another thing you wanted to say.
I'd like to advocate that an overlay of historic zoning be placed on the property, because otherwise there's no protection. Now, the historic zoning is not going to protect it very long. If you wait long enough, you may still tear it.
So we really only have the renter here. I would heartily recommend to Mr. Moore, and I'm sure you're listening, that you do place a historic overlay on your property, and that is the way to protect it. And I also recommend that whatever we decide tonight, one way or the other, that we review it in 1 year after the business has been up and going, so that we can see a little bit better what's happening, and then we will have had zoning changes. So that's my 2 cents, whatever it's worth.
Okay, anybody want to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we deny zone change from B2 to General Business District 3, Central Business District for this business.
I'll second.
So we are voting to deny.
Right. We have a motion and a second.
So a clarification here, what voting threshold do we have for this? Is Jerry?
It's a supermajority. You have to have. Oh, for the.
I'm here.
Oh, there you
So
go.
for denial, would it be a simple majority?
Right. To approve it would be
What do you say?
One more time, please, sir.
in order to approve the application, you need a supermajority.
But to deny it,
Majority.
A majority, I think, is what he said.
that's my only question.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny it from B2 to B3. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Okay. So what does that mean?
The motion fails.
Now you have to make a motion
Now you have
to
to
approve.
I make a motion that we approve item 6B as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 6B as presented. And we have a second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So now what?
Fails.
Majority.
Okay,
Just a majority.
okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, we're back. Consideration of proposed 2024-2025 budget. Mr. Semino.
Can I just say real quickly, who would have thought that working on our budget was going to be easier than the zoning change?
Well, thanks, Mayor and Council. Todd Semino, Interim Finance Director. Just to give a brief recap, this will be the third work session you've had in 5 weeks. And not that I'm not counting, but you've graciously endured over 51 slides and PowerPoint presentations and a little over 3 hours and 18 minutes in discussion. So you might be pleased to know that the presentation tonight is just going to be 9 slides. I think you've seen everything. But we do have some new topics on some of these slides that we do need to discuss. So we'll go ahead and get to that. Again, you've seen these priorities and challenges laid out by the city manager several times. I think this budget addresses all of these priorities and challenges by doing 4 simple things. We've structured and targeted salary increases. We've maintained excellent benefits such as insurance and health benefits with no additional cost to our employees this year. And in this day and time, that's pretty amazing in itself, just keeping insurance rates the same for our employees. We're going to be adding a chief of staff to focus on some of the issues that are on this slide. And then we're hoping to fill the vacancy of a planning director very soon with a competitive salary that's approved in this, well, that would be approved in this budget as well. Again, you've seen this slide also. The only thing that changed here is the wages that we're offering for police. And what I can say about this is that we had a meeting with the city manager, the HR director, the fire chief, the police chief, and members of both of their associations. And all parties agreed to this raise for the police. It does seem odd that it's 7.7%, so let me explain that briefly. It gets the opening salaries for the lowest tenured officers right above $60,000. So it's a psychological deal. You can't say you have any police officers making in the 50s. They're starting in the 60s. So that's the only thing that changed on this slide. And going from 3%, it was originally 3% for police. It went to 7.7, so that added an additional $234,000, including benefits to the budget. Other items that are included in the proposed budget that you all received over the weekend. Again, one of them is that chief of staff that I've already mentioned. We're reclassifying an administrative captain to division chief in the fire department at a cost of $11,900. And along with enhancing our benefits for employees, we're adding a holiday Juneteenth. You've also seen this slide before. On the left is salaries that were not considered for increases, or positions that were not considered for increases during the budget year because of the criteria that we had laid out due to them receiving larger raises during the year. And then we have some also requests for new employees that were requested that were denied currently. But what we would like to do, we'd like to come back mid-year and basically evaluate our property tax collections. You know, we went from 98, I'm only budgeting 95% because we're only going to expect 94% this year. So we want to wait till mid-year to analyze our property tax revenue and our sales tax revenue to see if we could afford any of these considerations maybe mid-year.
Hey, Todd, what did you say about, okay, 94, 95? Did you budget on 94?
No, sir.
You budgeted on 95?
Right.
Because of why, from the last meeting, you said we really don't have a certified tax roll because we haven't collected 95%, or Central Appraisal District has not collected 95%.
Right.
Of the taxes so far.
So again, this is a difficult thing to try to evaluate from my perspective. You know, after talking to the chief appraiser at the appraisal district, you know, and he's looking at his basically delinquent rolls that are still to be collected for the city. You know, we were still estimating that we were going to be $400,000 or $500,000 short of the levy that we did. So. And that was going to get us around a 94% collection rate. So, in looking at the budget for this year, I don't know what's actually going to happen by the end of this year, but we do get, you know, whether or not we're actually going to achieve 94% or 95%, because what he's saying that once these are turned over to the collection agency, you'll get more money out of the property taxes because then they add on penalties and interest and lawyers' fees and things like that. So we could actually come in at 95%. I just don't know yet. So in discussions with the chief appraiser and bringing all these things to light, I think there's probably going to be a lot more focus on the collection rate going forward. So I would hope we could at least achieve 95%, if not even better. But just to be conservative, I chose 95. Okay, here is the, a summary of the general fund. We talk a lot about, your operating income. So as you can see on the bottom, after we included the additional raise for police, our operating income is going to come in at $127,000, and this all includes, the proposed tax rate of 52.877 cents per $100 of valuation per year, and on the next item, you're actually going to be asked to take a record vote on that tax rate. The utility fund, I have a few new things on here to talk to you guys about. First, I just want to point out that the operating income for the utility fund is very good. It's $5.9 million. It's that second number to the bottom. And then you have excess cash of 2.7 after your 25% reserve requirement. But what's not included in here, first, what is included? I told you guys at the last workshop that our rate study consultants were looking at an increase between 5 and 6% on water rates. It came in right in the middle, 5.5. So that's included in this fund summary here. And it's really important that that we try to make sure we adopt that increase, because as y'all know, you're going to get basically a presentation from those consultants hopefully within the next 2 weeks before you approve the budget, so you're making an educated approval on this. But what I want to point out is in the capital plan for the utility fund, within the next 5 years, we have projects that are going to have a cumulative cost of $96 million. Currently, we have $40 million set aside for that capital plan. So that leaves a shortfall of $56 million. And so this rate increase is designed to go forward through the life of the capital plan and help subsidize that shortfall. And we might even have to talk about issuing revenue bonds to help subsidize this. It's either that or you're going to delay projects or kill projects. So that's a serious discussion that we probably need to have going forward, and that'll probably be in conjunction with the water rate study. But for now, we're putting that 5.5% rate increase, and what does that mean for our water customers? So I'm being told that the average use for a residential house is 4,000 gallons. That's the average. So for the average residential water customer, their bill will go up $2.50 a month. Okay, now what's not included in this fund summary, and we'll have to tweak it before you actually approve the budget, is that there was a request for 5 new full-time positions and 1 part-time position. And the cumulative cost for the 5 full-time and the 1 part-time, the cumulative cost is $288,000 a year, which includes benefits. And y'all should have received an email over the weekend saying what positions those were, but I'll just recap it real quick.
Is there a slide for that?
There's not.
Okay.
But one of the positions is an office assistant. 3 positions are for plant operators. 1 position is for a full-time meter technician, and 1 is for a part-time meter technician. So staff is here. If you have any questions about these 5 positions and the 1 part-time position, now would be the time to ask, or I'll just go ahead and move forward to the next slide. Okay, the sanitation fund, there's only one thing we need to add in here that's not included in the fund summary. Again, you have an operating income of $2.1 million. This fund always does really well, just like the water fund, at least on the operating side. So there's 4 reclassifications of employees that would come with an annual cost of $11,100 a year. And so that's not much money, so we would ask that those classifications or reclassifications be accepted into the budget as well. The last slide is the calendar. So again, today you're going to be asked to take a record vote on the proposed tax rate so we can publish it in the newspaper and make notice of our hearings. And state law requires that, you know, we go ahead and make an announcement of when our budget hearing is going to be. So I would like to recommend that we have the budget hearing on September 10th at 5:30 in these chambers. And then also, these notices will be published in the newspaper and put on our websites, but we're required to make a public announcement too. And then also, I could get to it later, but I'll go ahead and say now that the public hearing on the tax rate would be September 17th at 5:30 in these chambers.
Todd, I have a question about that. I think last year we ended up doing it all in one action. Is that possible or not?
It is possible. You can approve your budget and your tax rate all in the same day. If y'all wanted to do that, then we would have to move everything to September 17th. You couldn't do it on September 10th because of the timeline constraints. So that's up to the council. The only reason I usually try to separate the budget from the tax rate is that something might come up during the budget hearing that y'all would want to consider and then change. So doing the tax rate a week later also gives you time to run any changes through the budget. But if y'all are good with the way things stand, then we could
let's
do
leave them
everything
how
on the
they stand.
17th.
Let's leave them that way.
Leave it the 10th and the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's any other questions about the budget as it's proposed now, be happy to answer.
I think we've kind of beat that horse to death pretty good, don't you?
Well, I did want to say that I think y'all did an excellent job with a very, very tight budget, and I wish we had more money to work with for everybody, but I really thank you all, and you took our direction, and you worked hard to get everybody what they needed, so.
Right, and, I don't think.
At least the minimum of what we need, so.
I think Rick wouldn't mind me telling y'all, but one of the things that we wanted to do during this budget process was to evaluate all of our ordinances and fees and come to you with recommendations for any increases that are warranted. I know it's probably been 10, maybe even 20 years since permit revenues have been reviewed for increases. So I know he might charge the chief of staff or the new planning director with something like that, but that might be something that's combined with our mid-year review, how we can increase more revenues that are warranted to be increased, not just for the sake of increasing them, but that deserve an increase.
Yeah, we have a lot to do with a small amount of money. I actually think you all made every dollar weep, so thank you. I do like that.
But Todd, I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you,
This
Rick.
is Rick. Sorry,
Don't
I'm
breathe
where I
on
am
us.
right now.
Don't breathe on us.
I won't
please.
breathe on y'all though. Yes, Todd's correct. We are going to look at it. Obviously, we didn't want to count it in this fiscal year, but we're going to try to get underway with that. There are areas where, I mean, I would say most of our fees, especially if they involve, whether it's something regarding a rental of a park or it is even an inspection related item, most of those are effectively subsidized, meaning they're not even coming close to covering the cost or the impact.
We're nodding. You can't see that. Yeah.
It's time delayed.
Well, you sound pitiful, Rick, so.
He is pitiful.
Is it nice in Cancun?
Cabo.
Cabo.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
He took my place. Okay, so this is just, you don't need a motion on this, do you? Okay.
Yes, well,
Anybody have any more
not on
questions?
that, no.
Okay. All right. Chad? Any? Okay.
Tax rate.
Brad?
Good.
Okay. Next item, we'll go to 6D. City Council record vote for proposed tax rate for the 2024, 2025 fiscal year. Mr. Semino.
Yes, sir, Mayor. So since the proposed tax rate is greater than the no new revenue rate, state law requires that City Council is required to take a record vote on the tax rate being proposed for the fiscal year 2024 through 2025. The record vote will be included in the newspaper advertisement issued by the Nacogdoches Central Appraisal District, listing the date and time and the location of the public hearing. And again, just like to announce that the rate hearing, the tax rate hearing, would be on September 17th, 2024, 5:30 in these chambers. So at this time, we would like to have a record vote on the proposed tax rate being 0.52877 per $100 of assessed value.
Do they need an emotion?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion that we have a property tax rate of 0.52877 per $100 of assessed value.
And I will second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I sure hope I got that right.
Well, you said have a property tax rate. It's proposed, it's only proposed at this point.
Okay. All right, will you correct that for me, and if it needs to be in the minutes? Thank you.
That's all we need to do on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that rate was .05 what?
It's basically 52.877 cents.
5 cents. Okay. All right. I got it. 52. Okay. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next item, 6E, consider an ordinance amending ordinance number 1978-09-23, appropriating various amounts in accordance with the budget adopted for the ensuing fiscal year, beginning October 1st, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024. Mr. Semino.
Yes, sir. I believe you all received a memo that the ordinance states an amendment is necessary for $2.4 million. It actually should only be for $1.4 million. We'll get that ordinance corrected. But just to give you a little background, in fiscal year 2022, the height of COVID, we had ordered basically 3 sanitation trucks. And for that year, we had budgeted $1.2 million for these vehicles. We didn't get them in fiscal year 2022 because of the supply chain. When they arrived in fiscal year 2023, they arrived here, but they didn't meet specifications. So we returned them back to the vendors and then got the correct trucks in FY24. So what happened is that even though the budgeted funds were reappropriated in fiscal year 2023 due to the confusion of receiving the trucks, but they did not meet the specs and returning them, thus not having to pay them in FY23, and then actually getting the good trucks in FY24, there was just a lapse of asking for that appropriation carryover from 2023 to 2024. So that's what we're asking to be accepted and approved of today.
But it's carrying it over, but adding some money to it, is that right?
Yeah, so like I said, so the original was 1.2 million over 2 years, and changing, well, not changing the specs, but getting the correct spec trucks, it added some.
200,000 extra.
And it's really 1.35 million, close to that. What I like to do is give myself a little buffer when I come with a budget amendment, so I don't have to come back to you again, you know, when we're splitting dollars. So rounded it up to $1.4 million, but all of that was already appropriated in prior years. It just forgot to carry over into the year we're in now.
You need a motion right now? I move that we amend ordinance number 1978-09-23 as outlined in item 6E.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you for coming, and God bless the great city of Nacogdoches, Texas.